Hello, hello. Today we have a different start for every single matchup. Those Sunday games, Monday, Sunday mornings. They're going to be in Tottenham, London. Set your lineups early, but let's start there. That Minnesota Cleveland game. It's a tough start for sure. Quinshawn is a fine flex play, but I would say it's a downgrade for now with Gabriel. Long term, it's good that they're switching quarterbacks. We like that over what we kind of know what we're getting with Joe Flacco, especially for those pass catchers. But for right now, it's a little tough. They're playing in London against Flores' defense. Inexperienced quarterback, his very first game, playing against one of the most complex defenses in the NFL, a team with a pressure rate of 45%. And we've seen this 3 times already this season where they've played those inexperienced quarterbacks. Jake Browning, if you count that, but Caleb Williams and Michael Penix. All of them had under 7 yards per attempt. They had 2 passing touchdowns combined in those 3 games. Not the greatest matchup there. So I would go the Vikings defense as my start. It's tough to start any of these Browns. Judkins is fine. On the other side, Jefferson's the obvious start, but outside of that, like Mason is a horrible matchup. Gabriel helps him there in terms of the game script possibly, but still not the greatest defense to go against. So I would go with the Vikings DST to start off this early one. Houston and Baltimore is that next one. I would say a flex start would be Woody Marks. I'm not the most confident in him. I know people love him and the volume can be there. There's some potential there, having maybe not bell cow work with Chubb there, but maybe 65 to 70% would be good enough. And then he can be a matchup dependent guy because this offensive line and this offense isn't the greatest. But if they're playing Baltimore, who's 32nd against running backs, and they don't even have Lamar for game script reasons, that can be really good. The offense and defensive line advantage right now, the Texans are dead even. 14th out of 28 teams this week, even though usually they're on the lower end of that with their offensive line. But the Baltimore defensive line is helping them out. They're obviously 32nd against running backs for a reason. That's a big part of it. We're going to do 2 for this game. We got the Jets and Dallas. Just an amazing fantasy game. You're starting a lot of these guys. So let's do 2. Number 1 is Dak Prescott. I would say the perception is still overall positive about this Jets passing defense just because how they've been the past couple of years, but they really haven't been that good this year. Sauce Gardner is going to shadow George Pickens, so that'll be tough. Outside of that, though, they are 30th in EPA per dropback this year as a passing defense. Not the greatest. So I would say that my start would be Dak right there. The big thing that sticks out on top of that is the pressure. Dak has been under pressure a lot. The Cowboys' offensive line is last in pass blocking grade, but when we're looking at this Jets team, they're actually 6th worst in pressure. So it's not a huge day in terms of the pressure that Dak will be under. Give him a little bit more time. He doesn't have to be throwing it after 1.5 seconds every single play. Gives him some more room, and obviously we know that this defense is not helping him out in real life, but in fantasy helps him out a lot. So the opposite side of that, this Jets offense, I would go Breece Hall. Right now, the Cowboys are playing a ridiculous amount of zone coverage, partially because of the talent they have in that secondary. So it's less of that being because they're running zone coverage, but they're running zone coverage because they're not very good. But what that allows is a lot more receiving for the running backs. They are 4th worst against receiving running backs right now. Part of that is because of that zone coverage, those easier checkdowns. We know Justin Fields is a checkdown quarterback. Without Braylon Allen, it's already a good defense to go against in general for Breece Hall, and he should have a decent amount of that receiving too, so I like that there. Philly and Denver, it's sad to say that this is like a desperate start, maybe a flex start if you want to be positive. I'm going to go DeVonta Smith. It's so sad that he's a desperate start right now, but that's how I feel like he is. But he is set up well, at least. So even though he's had 1 good game and out of 4, below average versus the slot, this Broncos defense. So that'll help them because they're a great passing defense. They haven't been as good this year, and they've been basically average against slot receivers, where they're amazing against outside, mainly because Surtain. So Surtain is going to be shadowing A.J. Brown. That's the big thing. So DeVonta Smith definitely is the best matchup of the 2, and you're hoping for that game script again to be good for Philly, where they actually have to be throwing the ball. And Denver's offense at least gives them that challenge. And just the game in general, you're not expecting an Eagles blowout. So hopefully they are just more aggressive and actually throwing the ball, and that helps out DeVonta Smith. At quarterback, I'm going to go Jaxson Dart in this Saints and Giants game. Another one that's kind of weird where you're expecting it to be close for kind of the opposite reasons of that game. These are 2 losing teams. And Dart is an interesting one just because he doesn't really have the weapons. so we kind of have to rely on the rushing. The Saints are seventh worst against quarterbacks right now. They've been losing a lot of games by a lot, so it'd probably be worse if it was actually closer games. So Jaxson Dart, he had 10 runs last week. That was most against quarterbacks. They're going to design a bunch for him. And for one game, he had a very high scramble rate. So we would expect him to run a lot against this team. And the Saints are perfect for fantasy because they go at an insane pace of play. They're number one in the NFL, which means their drives go really fast, whether they're actually scoring or not. Plenty of time for the Giants offense to maybe have some time to get their offense together under this young quarterback, some more drives there in general, and then a defense that isn't really scaring you overall. So for that rushing volume, I don't mind Dart even with the lack of weapons. I have two different coverage stats for these next two guys. The first one is Daniel Jones versus Raiders team. They are running a ton of cover 3. It is what the Colts have been best against, Daniel Jones been best against, nearly 2 times better compared to just the other 2 high shell coverages. So Daniel Jones, he matches up well there. Vegas, they've been solid against fantasy quarterbacks. On paper, it doesn't look as good as when you're actually watching the games. So Herbert and Williams not putting up huge days against them. They had Mariota against them, but I like it for Daniel Jones. They're not going to stop scoring in the second half, even if they're up. We've seen that so far from the Colts, and I love it for fantasy. Carolina and Miami is this next one, and a receiver coverage stat. Ted McMillan. It's been good, solid, but we haven't had that great day. And around this time of the year is when a lot of these really good rookies break out. We've seen it the last couple weeks. We saw it this time last year with receivers. Brian Thomas Jr. was week 4. Ladd was week 6. That sort of thing. Bo Nix was week 5 this week, even though he's a quarterback. But Ted McMillan, against this defense, they run the most cover 2 in the NFL. And it surprised me. It's a short sample size, but it surprised me that McMillan was the best against cover 2 compared to other things, especially just like receivers in general usually score a little bit less because that limits big plays. But McMillan has killed it. He's getting those targets, and when it's cover 2 or man coverage, that's when he's been at his best this year, and that's what Miami plays a large majority of the time. So that's really good for him. Lines up well against the defense that is already 31st in passing defense. Storm Duck is going to be that primary corner. Congrats to him. He is now the last ranked corner in terms of fantasy points per route. He passed Kaiir Elam, who I've been talking a lot about, of the Cowboys secondary. So basically the best matchup you can get. I like McMillan. I like it. It could happen this week. This next guy, going Rachaad White. There's been lots of running back injuries. I've gotten a decent amount of questions about him and Sean Tucker, which I've been kind of surprised about. Like I expect, I'll talk about the Cardinals backs in a second. That one is a little more up in the air. I think Rachaad White's the guy here, is he not? So far, the snaps, Sean Tucker has 2, White's got 80. So Seattle, it's a defense that you're not really scared of. Going back to last year, this Tampa Bay offense, they've had 26 half PPR points for their running backs per game. They had 2 RB2s last year. Like it was Rachaad White and Bucky, both as fantasy RB2s. So when you take out Bucky, yeah, Sean Tucker's going to get some. But if White plays 70% of the snaps, gets 70% of the touches, which is what I would kind of expect, maybe 60%, that's still really valuable in a matchup that isn't bad. The Chargers versus Washington. My start here would be Deebo Samuel. No Terry McLaurin, Jaden Daniels, thankfully back. So we're getting Deebo, 18 targets over those first 2 games with McLaurin. These last 2 in a very run-heavy offense. He's got 9, so that's been cut in half. But overall, it's a nice stylistic matchup for him. So Deebo, he's really good against zone coverage. When he's getting manned up, he's not really the option that teams have gone to throughout his entire career. But when you get him in zone coverage, you can find those holes. That's where his yards after catch is really good. Jaden Daniels is really good against zone coverage. That's what you want. And the Chargers run zone about 85% of the time. It's extremely high. So no Terry McLaurin. You get Jaden Daniels back in there. That volume is up. Hopefully that efficiency matches it. I like it overall here, even though the Chargers in general are a good defense. The running back situation that's a little more murky is Arizona, obviously. Against the Tennessee defense, I was so excited to see Trey Benson against this Titans defense. He was going to score 30. He was going to make me happy. I already had him listed as the start. He's not the start no longer. He's on IR, but we are going to go a desperate start of Michael Carter. And again, I said this last week, but I have a league that I am starting Michael Carter. I have like 3 different injuries. It's a double flex league. We're sliding him in as that double flex off of waivers, and we're going to go with it. We saw it with Woody Marks last week. These Houston running backs had 40 touches or nearly 40 touches last week against the Titans defense where Houston they've been struggling and they won 26-0. So the Cardinals, they run the ball a decent amount. He said that he was the starter. And we look at last year. DeMercado was not playing. Trey Benson was also hurt. But James Conner went down kind of like the middle of the game, second quarter, I believe, of week 17. And Michael Carter, the rest of that game, had 15 touches. The next game, he started, played the full game, had 21 touches and 17 points. So yes, he was like a practice squad guy. He was the RB4 at some point. It's a very rare situation where we actually have like that guy, but have very recent proof of a few games ago they actually trust him with that bell cow work. Same offense coordinator, same head coach. They've talked him up in terms like, hey, we trust this guy. He's a good pass blocker. He can do it all. He ran basically every single route last year when he was that guy over the other Cardinals running backs. So DeMercado will get a lot of that receiving, but I think that is what his role is, not to take a lot of these touches. DeMercado, 75% of his plays in his career have been pass plays. So I don't think they're bringing him in like he had one game where he got a ton of the rushing, but I think that is going to go to Michael Carter now that he's there and they have that trust in him. So if you need a desperate start out of the two running backs in Arizona, especially since it's going to be a more rushing focused game, I would guess, I would say Michael Carter. A play that I'm definitely the most excited about, I'll talk about it here. I talked about it in my article. I talked about it on the KOC show, and I'll talk about it in my bold prediction this week. It is a ceiling start for Jamison Williams. He's had one this year, and he's had 3 games where he kind of sucked. We talked all offseason, or they talked to us, about how the Lions, again, are going to expand Jamison Williams' route tree. He's going to be an all-around receiver this year, all that sort of stuff. And then his ADOT went from 12 yards downfield to 21 so far this season. 21. Tyquan Thornton is the only guy that has that's a higher ADOT this year. It's insane. It's insane. The Bengals defense, though, real quick, they're 6th worst against receivers, and a big stat to remember is they have the 3rd best pass rush advantage, the Lions do, against the Bengals defensive line. That is big because of how they're using Jamison Williams. They are not lining him up like a Marvin Harrison Jr. last year or George Pickens last year in Pittsburgh, where he's just the outside receiver every single play and he's running a go route. They are a very unique offense where he is kind of just playing outside receivers and just running deep routes, but they're doing it extremely creatively, which is fun to watch. So I went back and looked at every single one of his routes last week, and the way they use them is really fun, and it can equal a lot of these days where they're just huge days. So he had 8 targets last week. He had 2 catches. It wasn't very good. He had a little hitch route and a crossing route for like 25 yards. That was it. But the other 6 targets is what's important. 1, Goff got picked because he was under pressure and he had Jamison Williams on a post route. It probably wasn't open, but he was throwing the deep post. Number 2, he had a deep post. Easy touchdown, 50 yards. His arm gets hit. Incomplete. Slot fade that he barely overthrows him. 50-yard touchdown potential. A corner route that was going nowhere. A crossing route for another 25 yards that was just dropped on an easy catch. And there was a couple of those like that where it was just like, throwing it deep after deep on these like open, good routes. There was separation there, and because of pressure, because of a slight underthrow, a slight overthrow, there's another fade route that was slightly underthrown. It didn't happen. But against the Bengals defense, that pressure is probably not going to be there like it was for Myles Garrett in this Browns defense last week, and they probably can't guard it. I think the ceiling is going to be incredible this week for Jamison Williams. I would start him. I am starting him. Hunter Henry is this next one for New England and Buffalo. When we're talking tight ends, once we get past Trey McBride and maybe a couple others, all you're really caring about is touchdowns. Like that's, if you have a good tight end week, it's probably because he scored a touchdown. Like how often are you having a good tight end week and it's because they have 7 for 80 yards and no touchdowns? So Hunter Henry, can he get a touchdown this week? Well, in this Buffalo matchup, they have a good game script in terms of they should be passing a lot. The over-under in this game is about 50 points. That projected total points right at 50. So the touchdown potential is there. He's already had 3, but I wouldn't expect a huge amount of regression in terms of just at least one game, especially because his red zone target share is ridiculous. He's number 1 among tight ends in red zone target share and in air yards. They're targeting him a ton down there, and it makes sense. Like who else are they really going to go to? Like they have Diggs, and that's kind of it among the receivers, and he hasn't been doing too much. So Henry's been that number one guy when they get down there, and they have a chance to be throwing a lot and hopefully scoring a lot. So I like Henry there. And the last guy, the only must start of this video, not that I'm telling you what to do, but my must start of the week, Xavier Worthy, in this Monday night game. He wasn't incredible in terms of fantasy last week. It was like 12 or 13 points. His usage, though, was amazing. He is the focal point of this offense without Rashee Rice. He's playing on the outside this year compared to when he was at his best last season at the end of the year. He's playing basically the Rashee Rice role when Marquise Brown had like those 15 targets at the start of the year, like that sort of thing. Now he's playing on the outside, which maybe wouldn't be my ideal looking back or like looking in the offseason. But with Rashee Rice coming back, and we know that's going to be his role, it is extremely encouraging that in the one game we've seen him on the outside, he killed it. And he has the matchup to kill it again. And he's going to get that usage we know, or at least we would expect. Travis Kelce isn't doing much. Those receivers not doing too much. And he's being used downfield. So this Jacksonville defense, on average against outside receivers this year, they are allowing 15 more points per game compared to the NFL average. Second worst in the NFL. Basically every other year that would be the worst, but we got a Dallas Cowboys defense this year. So the advantage is on the outside this week compared to the slot. And his targets this year in one game, targets per route right now is 35%. That is third in the NFL to just JSN and Puka. That's pretty good. So we can have a lot of valuable targets and a lot of targets in general against a matchup that is really good on Monday Night Football. I would not be shocked at all if there are some teams that have just Xavier Worthy left and they're down by 20 plus points and they pull it off on Monday Night Football. I hope it happens. I'm starting in one league and I'm excited, so we'll see what happens there. But thank you guys for watching. All starts right now. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything like that, I'll try my best to answer them all in the comments by Sunday morning and do it there. Hope you guys have a good weekend and see you soon.